Okay, today's lesson is our third kind of factoring. So as you know, the first thing that you look for when you factor is a greatest common factor. So an example of a problem in which you would factor out a greatest common factor would be a problem like x squared plus 5x. In that problem, you would factor out an x and you'd be left with x plus 5. Or maybe even one like 2x squared minus 10x plus 8. In that problem, we would factor out the 2 first out of all terms, and we'd have x squared minus 5x plus 4. And as you know, if the leading term is negative in a greatest common factor problem, we're wanting to factor a negative out of all of the terms. So if we had x cubed minus 5x, we'd factor out a negative x, and we'd be left with x squared minus 5. The last video you saw was factoring a difference of two squares. We factor our difference of two squares when there's two terms separated by a minus sign and they're both perfect squares. So I would factor that x squared minus 9 like x minus 3 and x plus 3. Or I'd factor, say, y to the 10th minus 49 as y to the 5th plus 7 and y to the 5th minus 7. Okay, the third kind of factoring that we're going to do today is called product sum. So go ahead and pause the video and write these steps on the top flap of the next part of your foldable. So what we're going to do first is always look for a GCF. That's the first thing we look for when we factor it. That's why we learned it first. When we have our quadratic trinomial, it's quadratic because of the x squared, we have an A, B, and a C. So today's lesson is only for a quadratic trinomial with A equal to 1. So it's going to look like x squared plus bx plus c. We won't have any numbers in front of the x squared. Then what we're going to do is we're going to find two numbers that multiply to c and add to b. That's why it's called product sum. Two numbers multiply to c and add to b. So let's take a look at the first few examples. Okay, number 1. Is there a greatest common factor that we can factor out? No. So we see that we have a quadratic trinomial. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to put an x here and here. Now we're looking for two numbers that multiply to c, so this is our product, and add to b, so this is our sum. So we're going to maybe start listing out all the numbers that multiply to 8. Actually, that multiply to negative 8. So negative 1 and positive 8, or positive 1 and negative 8. 2 and negative 4, or negative 2 and 4. Since they have to multiply to a negative number, they're going to have opposite signs. Now we just pick the pair that also adds to give negative 2. So it's going to be this one. So then we just write the plus 2 and the minus 4 in our parentheses. Done. We can check by foiling it out. So when we check, we're going to do first times first. Outer product is minus 4x. Inner product is plus 2x. And then last times last is negative 8. When we combine these like terms in the middle, we get negative 2x, and so it does indeed check out, and it equals our original problem. Okay, next. Number 2, is there a greatest common factor? No. I don't see any factors that those have in common. So we're ready to proceed. It's a quadratic trinomial, 3 terms, and the first term has an x squared. So we're looking for two numbers that give us a product of 2 and that give us a sum of 3. So writing down the numbers I can think that multiply to 2 is 1 times 2 or negative 1 times negative 2. Well, the numbers also have to add to a positive 3. So it's going to be the positive 1 and the positive 2. So we're going to write that in our binomials. Finished. Okay, next, again, we have a quadratic trinomial. So we have 3 terms, and the first one is an x squared. So the first thing we look for always is a greatest common factor. These don't have anything in common, so we're ready to proceed. So we need 2 numbers that give us a product of 20. So writing out everything that multiplies to a positive 20. 1 times 20 or 2 times 10 or 4 times 5. So we need a product of 20, but a sum of negative 9. So it looks like it would have to be this one. X minus 4, x minus 5. Okay, the first thing we look for when we factor is a greatest common factor. So number 4, there's a greatest common factor of 3. Let's factor a 3 out of our trinomial. We're left with x squared minus 9x minus 22. So now our product is the 22 and our sum is negative 9. So writing out everything we can think of that multiplies to negative 22. Since it multiplies to a negative, one term is positive, one is negative. So 1 times 22 or 2 times 11. Oops, a negative there, or negative 2 times positive 11. Okay, so we want the pair of numbers also to add to a negative 9. So we need to keep that 3 in front of the problem. It's part of the factoring, and we're going to write our x plus 2, x minus 9. Okay, the first thing you look for when you factor is a greatest common factor. I keep repeating that because students forget it. So on the first one, on the fifth one here, we're going to first factor out a negative sign. So our common factor is just a negative. So factoring out negative, we get x squared plus 7x and then minus 8. So again, we're looking for 2 numbers that give us a product of negative 8. So negative 1 times 8, 1 times negative 8, 2 times negative, 2 times negative, times negative, oh, I keep touching that. Let me just work down here then. 2 times negative 4 or negative 2 times 4. So that they have to multiply to a negative 8 and add to a negative 7. Add to a positive 7. Because our product is here negative 8 and our sum is positive 7. So I think the first one I wrote down, yeah. So writing our factors in the parentheses, we're going to get an x minus 1 and an x plus 8. Keep the negative in front. It is part of your factors. By the way, so what are the factors of this polynomial? Its factors are negative 1, x minus 1, and x plus 8. Those are the only things that we can divide out of this problem, number 5, evenly. Those are its factors. Okay, number 6. First thing we look for is a greatest common factor. So these terms all have a 2 in common. and they have a y in common. So let's divide out a 2y. We're left with x squared plus 13x plus 40. So our product is 40. So let's do this mentally now. So let's think about numbers that multiply to 40 and add to 13. Positive 5 and positive 8. It doesn't matter which order you write those in the parentheses, but like for this previous example, the negative has to go with the 1 and the positive has to go with the 8. But it doesn't matter which parentheses they go in, the first one or the second one.